Brad Pitt net worth 2026, The Five Lives of a Movie Star. 2 credits shy of a journalism degree from the University of Missouri, William Bradley Pitt had walked out on every stable thing his family ever built for him. Church on Sundays. Eagle Scout badges. The quiet Midwestern understanding that you finish what you start. He finished none of it. Instead, he drove west with enough cash for about 3 weeks of gas, ramen, and the kind of $200 a month rent that existed in Los Angeles before Los Angeles understood what it was becoming. The Datsun is gone. However, the $325 has multiplied by roughly 1.2 million times over. Brad Pitt net worth in 2026 stands at $400 million, and that figure does not include the Château Miraval estate valued at approximately $500 million, currently held in escrow pending a February 2027 trial. What the number does include is 5 distinct careers, 2 Academy Awards, 1 production company sold to a French media conglomerate for $300 million, and a 61-year-old man in Hydra, Greece right now, filming his next movie, calmer than he has been in 2 decades. This is how that happened. The arc at a glance. 5 eras, 5 reinventions. Most Hollywood fortunes fit 1 era. However, Pitt fits 5. Each era maps to a different identity, a different cultural moment, and a different category of buyer psychology that has kept his brand equity compounding for nearly 4 decades. The sequence runs from aspiration to rebellion to power to control to legacy. Furthermore, every transition was a bet. Most of them paid. Nevertheless, a few cost him dearly. Ultimately, the net result is the most durable A-list career in modern Hollywood. Era 1. The outsider who hijacked Hollywood, 1987 to 1994. Springfield, Missouri, produced a specific kind of kid. Southern Baptist. Quiet. Eagle Scout. Young Brad Pitt checked every box through high school, and yet something underneath was already restless. Ultimately, 2 weeks before his journalism degree at Mizzou, he packed the Datsun and left. Consequently, his family was bewildered. Moreover, his future was entirely speculative. The jobs before the work Los Angeles did not roll out a carpet. Instead, Pitt drove strippers in limousines. He moved refrigerators. Furthermore, he wore a giant chicken suit for El Pollo Loco on Sunset Boulevard. Meanwhile, he studied acting under Roy London and auditioned relentlessly. Early credited work came in 1987 in bit parts on Another World in Dallas, then uncredited roles in Less Than Zero and No Way Out. However, none of it mattered yet. The 90 seconds that changed everything in 1991, Ridley Scott cast Pitt as J.D., a charming hitchhiker who seduces Geena Davis's character in Thelma and Louise. The scene paid $6,000. Moreover, the screen time was minimal. Nevertheless, the impact was seismic. Women noticed. However, Hollywood panicked. Who exactly was this guy? Within 2 years, he was carrying A River Runs Through It and Legends of the Fall. By 1994, he was commanding multi-million-dollar quotes and landing magazine covers worldwide. The Missouri Kid had arrived. However, he was famous without being respected, and that gap would define everything he did next. Consequently, for the full case study in Outsider to Icon Architecture, readers can explore the Keanu Reeves net worth story, another actor who arrived in Hollywood with nothing and built a fortune on a completely different emotional register. Era 2. The rebellion that built the brand, 1995 to 1999. Fame without respect is a trap. Plenty of pretty men before Pitt walked into the same trap and never left it. Instead, he did something almost no A-list actor at his commercial peak has done before or since. Specifically, he chose ugly. Say 7 12 Monkeys, and the first Oscar nomination David Fincher's Say 7 in 1995 was the first signal. Then 12 Monkeys earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Terry Gilliam had cast him as a twitchy mental patient, and Pitt disappeared into it. Consequently, the industry began to notice that the guy selling tickets could also act. Fight Club and The Detonation, then came 1999. Fight Club arrived, flopped at the box office, and detonated culture for the next 25 years. Tyler Durden was not a character. Rather, Tyler Durden was a referendum on masculinity, consumerism, and the rage underneath the American middle class. Furthermore, Pitt fought 3 studios to make it. The film earned $100 million globally on a $63 million budget, which Hollywood read as failure. However, 2 decades later, it is the only film from that year anyone still quotes. The brand becomes unpredictability by the end of the decade. Pitt was no longer selling looks. Instead, he was selling risk. Directors wanted him because he would go ugly, insane, invisible, or broken. Additionally, his private life intensified the fascination. The engagement to Gwyneth Paltrow ended publicly in 1997. Meanwhile, his marriage to Jennifer Aniston began in 2000, setting up the chapter that would consume the next decade of tabloid coverage. The Rebellion era produced peers who executed the same chaos-ass strategy playbook at different scales. Ben Affleck's net worth story traces a similar post-fame reinvention arc, filtered through Boston rather than Missouri. Era 3. Power couple as infrastructure, 2000 to 2009. In 2001, Pitt co-founded Plan B Entertainment with his wife, Jennifer Aniston. Additionally, Ocean's 11 opened that same year and gave Hollywood a new archetype, the heist ensemble as A-list summit meeting. Pitt was no longer a star. He was becoming a node in a network. Brangelina as a business model in 2004. Pitt met Angelina Jolie on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Consequently, the Aniston marriage ended in 2005. What followed was not a relationship. Rather, it was global infrastructure. The couple dominated tabloid economies on every continent. They adopted children. Then biological children arrived. Moreover, they bought Château Miraval, a 1,200-acre estate in the south of France with 35 rooms and a recording studio where Pink Floyd once worked. At the time, the property was a romantic purchase. However, today it is valued at approximately $500 million and is the central asset in a legal battle that has run for nearly 5 years. The films that funded the decade during this era, Pitt delivered his highest-grossing commercial run. Troy arrived in 2004. Then Mr. and Mrs. Smith in 2005. Ocean's 12 and 13 followed in close succession. Notably, Benjamin Button in 2008 earned him his second Oscar nomination. Furthermore, each project reportedly paid between $20 million and $30 million upfront, plus significant back-end participation on the commercial hits. Plan B wins Best Picture by 2007. Plan B had produced The Departed, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture. The infrastructure was no longer just relational. It was institutional. Pitt had shifted from talent to ownership, and the industry adjusted accordingly. The other half of Brangelina is its own case study. Readers can trace Angelina Jolie's $120 million net worth story, the ghost narrative that runs parallel to this one. For the partnership arc that defined the same decade on the male side, George Clooney's $500 million origin details the peer who turned the Ocean's era into a tequila empire. Meanwhile, Jennifer Aniston's $320 million net worth story reveals what the pre-Brangelina chapter actually built. Era 4. The operator behind Plan B, 2010 to 2016. The 2010s were the years Pitt became an executive. The acting continued. However, the real work was behind the camera now. Consequently, Plan B was developing, producing, and picking winners with uncanny frequency. Moneyball and the selective leading man Moneyball in 2011 earned Pitt another Oscar nomination for Best Actor. The film was about a baseball executive who disrupted the game by applying math to intuition. Notably, critics read it as allegory. Pitt had spent 20 years disrupting Hollywood's expectations of what a leading man could be, and Moneyball was simply him making that playbook explicit on screen. 3 Best Picture winners in 9 years. Plan B's production slate during this era is the single most prestigious run in modern independent film. 12 Years a Slave won Best Picture in 2014. Then The Big Short earned the company critical acclaim in 2015. Subsequently, Moonlight won Best Picture in 2017, making Plan B one of only a handful of production companies to win the top Academy Award 3 times in a decade. The divorce that should have ended the story in September 2016, Angelina Jolie filed for divorce. Consequently, custody battles over 6 children dominated tabloid coverage for years. Legal fees reportedly exceeded $15 million. Furthermore, Pitt's alcohol use became public. He entered therapy. Notably, he spoke openly in GQ and the New York Times about the wreckage. The era that began with Plan B's first Best Picture ended with Pitt in recovery rooms. Nevertheless, the production company kept winning. The operator kept operating. Meanwhile, his peers during this phase include Leonardo DiCaprio's $300 million operator story, whose Appian Way Productions mirrors the Plan B blueprint with a different capital base, and Reese Witherspoon's $400 million arc, the female operator who sold Hello Sunshine to Blackstone for $900 million and executed the cleanest producer exit in modern Hollywood. Era 5. The Late Stage Legend, 2017 to present. The rebuild was slow. He got sober. Extended therapy became a constant, not an event. His relationship with his children took years to rebuild, piece by piece. Additionally, he reclaimed something almost number 54-year-old movie star ever gets back: the ability to work from a place of quiet rather than adrenaline. The Oscar that arrived last in 2019, Quentin Tarantino cast Pitt as Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The performance was effortless, generous, and deeply self-aware. Consequently, at the 92nd Academy Awards, Pitt won Best Supporting Actor. He was 56. Critics widely read the win as overdue. However, the more interesting reading was that it was perfectly timed. Notably, the Oscar arrived exactly when he had built the internal foundation to hold it. F1 and the $30 million payday in June 2025, Joseph Kosinski's F1 opened globally to $146 million. By late summer, it had crossed $630 million and surpassed World War Z to become the highest-grossing Brad Pitt film in history. Furthermore, Pitt was paid $30 million for the role, the highest salary of his career. The film earned 4 Academy Award nominations at the 98th ceremony: Best Picture, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects. F1 will not win Best Picture at the 2026 ceremony. Nevertheless, its nomination confirms something worth stating plainly. At 61, Brad Pitt remains one of the only movie stars alive who can open a $600 million film on the strength of his name alone. The architecture era. Furthermore, Pitt has returned to architecture. He studied under Frank Gehry in the early 2010s. He launched Make It Right, which built over 100 LEED Platinum homes in New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward before construction defects, and a $20.5 million settlement exposed the project's execution flaws. However, the underlying impulse never died. In 2022, he exhibited sculptures at a museum in Finland, including a miniature house assembled from bark and tape. Currently, his furniture collaborations with the Italian design house Polaro Custom Furniture have entered the collector market at prices that rival established design brands. The late-stage legend arc